Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, a podcast about leaving self-doubt in the dust, punching fear in the face, and taking bold action toward your biggest dreams. I'm Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is my friend Mícheál O'Neill. Say hi, Mícheál.
Hey, Angie. How you doing? I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And look, just before we kick off, I just love what you're doing with Permission to Kick Ass. So I think everybody has been in a position where all they needed was a little encouragement and somebody to tell them that, yes, you can do it. You can make a difference in the world. And, there's so much negativity and divisiveness in the world that it's just so refreshing to see somebody come out and say what you're saying. And, for so often I would have loved in my past if somebody had to put their arm around my shoulder and said, you know what, Mícheál? Yes, you can do it. So, and I know there's an awful lot of people out there who need to hear that as well. So thank you.
Oh, man, you just made my day. And this is the first episode I'm going to record today. So I'm just going to be flying high. Somebody's going to have to pop my head so I can leave the room later. I've told the origin story about this podcast before where, my mentor said, hey, I am hereby giving, you don't need permission to be an expert, but in case that's what's holding you back, I am giving you official permission, TM, to get out there and do this. And then I still didn't really embrace that for probably like a year until I saw a colleague of mine that I really respected, who was also a high-level copywriter. She had just landed a project, and in our private mastermind group was like, okay, watch me melt down in real time. Like, I haven't heard from them for 12 hours after I submitted drafts. So clearly I'm the most horrible person on the face of the earth, and everybody knows that I'm a fraud. And that was when it really clicked for me that I'm not the only one freaking out about everything and wondering if I'm doing it right, and, potentially miscommunicating with people and shooting myself in the foot. And that was when it really just opened my eyes to like, I'm not alone, but I am over here kind of suffering in silence while I'm pretending like I have all my shit together. So that was really the impetus behind this show, just to show other people that like, yeah, there are a lot of people at a lot of levels of success that are fucking it up all the time and they're doing just fine.
Yeah, it's exactly, so many people out there are afraid, and it's almost that they'll be afraid that they'll be found out, afraid to stick their head up above the crowd and to stand out because, staying in your lane is comfortable. And having worked with so many entrepreneurs in the past, it's almost like staying safe is this so it is a primal instinct. And, previously it was because we could have got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Yeah. That's not here anymore. But I think the new survival instinct is not to have our insecurities or our flaws exposed. And, I think it's made an awful lot worse by social media when all we look around, we see everyone with their perfect lives and their perfect business and their, perfect everything else, hugely successful. Well, why? Because they say so on Instagram. But, everybody is dealing with their own crap. And I think really the thing that really differentiates, nobody gets great success without having great challenges and, overcoming great things. And I think the one thing that differentiates really successful entrepreneurs from the ones who, just get by or don't make it as well is they're more comfortable in embracing who they are, what they do, their challenges, their weaknesses, and just putting it all out there. And I think, like, if you look at it for any business and any business idea or anybody starting a business who has a business, there are people who were not, who had less than you, who were born with less money, with less opportunity, who, have less skills, who have less talent, who have less experience. And guess what? They are living the life and living the dream that you have.
Yes. And they don't have anything special that you don't. That was like the biggest eye opener. I think somebody actually said that to me when I was feeling particularly, stuck in my victim mode of, I have this job and I have a mortgage and I have to stay because I need stability. And like this just story that I told myself that kept me trapped in misery for so long. And when I was just looking at my friends that were successful freelancers and being super envious of them, one of them just said, Angie, we don't have anything that you don't. We just made the choice to make the leap and then figured it out along the way. And that was another light bulb moment for me that somebody was like, you have all the skills. You're just not doing anything with it. But I surround myself with blunt people like that on purpose that really help me get out of my own way sometimes, especially when that fear cycle just like takes over and starts screaming at you.
Yeah, and look at it. It's not just. I think everybody needs that, and I think that's why especially in entrepreneurship, why coaching is so important, because it is so hard for people to see themselves. It's so hard for people to see their own qualities, their own skills, and to believe in themselves. And that's why, kind of coaching, that's why I love, what you're doing and stepping out and helping people, because you're really helping people. And what was it, you're there to believe in people until they have enough, until they believe in themselves enough to get to where they want to go. And it's just, I think it's, it's something that as or as somebody aspiring entrepreneur or as an entrepreneur, I think it's the one thing to really lean into, is to find that either, on a commercial basis or on a peer basis, to find those blunt people who are just going to come out and who are going to say it. And
they'll say it because they love you, not because they want to keep you down or they feel superior. Like, there's a difference between people that are blunt because they want to help you and people that are blunt because they're assholes. And knowing the difference between the two, I think, is really important.
And the first one is a very, very rare. So the first one is a very rare species, because there are the other people who will not be blunt because they feel that they might hurt you, or will not be blunt because they couldn't really care. They don't want to go there because they don't want to feel uncomfortable saying something. Then you have the people who are blunt just because, well, they're rude and ignorant, and that's what, that's the way they operate. And let's face it, that's, not a character assassination. There is stuff going on in them that is causing that's not the personality. That's a behavior that has developed over time. And I don't want to, there are people who are blunt, and when you start looking back at, what's happened in their past, you can understand exactly how they got to there. But it's a very rare breed of people who will be blunt enough to be honest, and honest because they want to see you succeed and they want to see you step. And if you do find one of those people, you hang on to them.
Yes.
And you
declare them your new best friend and keep them in your life for as long as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
And I get that discomfort, because look, from the other end of it, as somebody that is categorically blunt, and I hear about it all the time, so I just acknowledge that this is my personality. The part of the reason that I am this way is because in the past, when I have made my visible missteps from putting myself out there, I've had various people over the course of my career reach out to me, usually privately, and say, hey, maybe consider doing it differently because what you just did could cause XYZ. And it was because they came up to me and challenged me that I have this mindset of, even when I'm going into an uncomfortable conversation, I have to give someone some harsh feedback. I have to give somebody some advice that they may not be ready or willing to hear right now because of where they're at. And I totally get that. I go into this thinking, do I need to say this? If there's one person that needs to hear this message and will be impacted by it, then yes, I need to say this. Even if it comes across as harsh, even if somebody has to go cry for a little bit and then come back and be like, yeah, you were right. I've had people do that to me, and it changed my life for the better.
Yeah. And it's something that's really important when you, for a lot of people listening here, they're either are entrepreneurs, business owners, or aspiring entrepreneurs, business owners, or, there's a mix obviously as well. But if you think about, for your team, I think, and if you're building a team and if you're working with people, I think that's possibly one of the single most, important leadership skills to have, because yes, you want your business to grow and develop and move forward, but your business is only grow and develop as much as your team grows and develops. So if you're, and look, there's nothing wrong. If you're one person, consultant, whatever it is, business, and that's how you want to operate, that is a brilliant business model. And that is the perfect one for you. I'm not saying you have to build a team, but if you're building a team, your business, suddenly you are not the most important player on the field, your team is. And you need to think about how you give them feedback, so that not just that you get the result from your business, but you get a result for them.
Well, and that's important as a leader too. And I'm going to circle back to give that a little bit of context in a second. But I think too many leaders, they give the critical feedback, but they forget the positive feedback too. Like it's one thing to be really good at giving critical feedback in a way that helps someone improve and feel more confident in their skills. But if you're also neglecting to say, hey, I really like that project that you did. Oh, I really like that approach that you took. I appreciate that. Please keep that up. That will go a really long way with keeping your team like loyal and motivated and really just in it to win it because they love you. And I mean, like, I love that you're talking about teams because I think you're one of the more advanced business owners that I've brought onto the podcast, and you have grown teams. You've been through multiple iterations of your business. Actually, I'd love to take a second for you to tell the listeners what you do and what you have done in your past as a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started a business with my brother probably 16 years ago. So as you can probably tell, and this is not an American or a Canadian accent, so based in Ireland, and we started out providing consultancy and training to accountants. It was a form of insanity. I think when the business started, I think I was 21. I was still in college. My brother was 6 years older than me, so he was 27. We had no clients. He was a qualified accountant. He worked for a year or 2 years with one of the institutes. And then we decided to start up this business. So we went, and the crazy thing about the business is we're in a tiny niche. So we serve practicing accountants. So practicing accountants, think PwC, KPMG, the accounting firms, as opposed to accountants in industry. And the nuts thing about it was we pretty much only had an entire market. We had, when we started out, probably around 2,500 potential business clients. So only 2,500 clients, but that didn't let it stop us. We forged ahead. And as it turned out, it was a pretty good business to be in. So we grew. At one stage, we had a training division. We were running 150 to 180 courses a year. These are public courses where we would have, we would pick a topic, speakers, we'd book a hotel, we would market the event, run the event, issue the CPD certs, and move on to the next one. And our team was growing, but we suddenly realized, oh crap, we were really burning out. We kind of hit a bit of a crisis point where we decided something had to change, because like we were young and we were very focused on building a business, but there is more to life.
Yes,
and the business is one element of life, and you can, we kind of lost sight of that, and the business was life for us. And it was at that stage that, we kind of met a mutual friend in Jeff Walker, and we started looking at, well, how can we move from this thing where we were consulting in, accountancy firms and training all around the country? How can we move that online? So we did our, we brought out our first information product, and we brought out another information product, another one. Then we had a couple of memberships, and all of a sudden, we were there. Our business was, we had 25 employees. We had a turnover of, in US dollars, it was just over $3 million US, 25 employees. And we had about 1.5 million in recurring annual revenue from digital products.
Wow.
Now, and as things moved on, I kind of absolutely, my heart has always been with business and helping business owners grow. And, then I came across the online business. So, way back in the business, or way back at the start of the business, I started delivering start your own business courses purely almost as a hobby. And I just went in, I delivered one. It was good. But, these were 3-day, so 3-day or 10-week courses. And at one stage, I think there were 2 years where I had 3 Saturdays off. So I was delivering courses every single Saturday. And I absolutely just adored working with entrepreneurs. And then, I came across the online business model, and, it was a tough decision. But as of last, I think it was October, I exited OmniPro, and I actually set up a business now where I'm helping online entrepreneurs to launch, scale, and grow information products, memberships, and to really, kind of what I'm trying to do is help people attract perfect fit clients. Because
that's awesome.
So that's kind of me in a nutshell, and that's where like a lot of what I was kind of talking about earlier was through that experience of, I think I put over 1,000 people 1,000 entrepreneurs through Start Your Own Business courses.
Mm-hmm.
So at 23, I was the largest provider of Start Your Own Business courses in Ireland. We have government agencies that run courses to help entrepreneurs. Ireland is built on small business. It's just, it's amazing. We have really high level entrepreneurship, but there's a government agency that does it. And I started working with about 7 or 8 of the enterprise boards in delivering these courses. So I kind of and you might say, but how could you get to that point at about 23, 24 when you'd only started one business? But I just absolutely adored the topic. And it kind of gave me some interesting insights into entrepreneurship and, where people can go. But yeah, so that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Well, and I think that's great too, speaking to expertise, because I think that's a limiting belief that holds a lot of would-be entrepreneurs back, especially from becoming like a freelancer or a consultant. They think, either I don't have a certification, or like you said, you're how old and you have how much experience? Why are you qualified to teach me? And look, somebody that's one step ahead of you can help you learn that step, right? So they're the expert in that step. Just being one step ahead of you, you don't have to be the guru on top of the mountain to be able to turn around and help someone through a problem. And there is such a thing as accidental expertise too. That really opened my eyes when my mentor brought that up to me, because it was like, if you go through a really rough, painful divorce and you had a lot of challenges along the way, well, it sucks, but now you're an expert. Not necessarily in all cases of hard divorces, but you got through it and you can help someone else get through it. And that's accidental expertise. You don't take a course to specialize in that, but you can wind up falling into it. It's fantastic.
It's one of my big things that sometimes the guru status actually works against you, in terms of delivery, because you've actually gone so far past the point where of the people you're trying to help that you don't even see what their next step is, because all the steps, when you've gone so far, like if you think about a really, really long staircase, when you look backwards, all the steps kind of just blend into one. Whereas when you're a couple of steps ahead of people, you're just after taking them and you're true. Now, I also do not believe in, there's sometimes, you'll see it in the online world where people just, pick a topic and go create, information product and become, I don't necessarily believe in that. You have to be able to deliver transformation, and you have to you have to be able to get the results for the people, because that's what really, really matters at the end of the day. But as long as you can get the results and you do have a process for doing that, sometimes you're the best person possible in order to help the people.
Absolutely. Like, I've compared it to being kind of on a hiking trail on a mountain. The guru is way up at the top and they can't even see you, let alone warn you that, like, hey, there's a rock there that's kind of loose that you're probably about to trip over, or like, maybe get your raincoat out because you're heading up toward the waterfall. Like, they can't even see you. They're so far away from you. But somebody that just passed that slippery rock or that waterfall can turn around and shout at you like, hey, watch out. Hey, you need my hands? Like, come on, I'm gonna help you step over the rock so that you don't fall down. And there's a lot of value in somebody helping you over that particular hurdle, like just where you are. So I think if you're using that as an excuse to, like, I haven't achieved guruhood, I haven't achieved certification, but can you help someone get a result? That's all they care about.
And the opposite is true, just because obviously, Angie, I know there's a lot of gurus listening to you because, they're real, recognized real, right? So I know there's a lot of gurus out there. It's not that being a guru is a negative. You just have to think. You have to think very carefully. Okay, these are all the things that I just do automatically. And it's the driving a car analogy in reverse. So you sit into a car, you don't think about where the gear stick is, everything else. You have to take your experience and your knowledge, but also position yourself back into what it was like when you were starting off. And it's not that being a guru is the issue. It's forgetting what it was like, or forgetting what that experience was like when you were coming through that period is the problem. It's just that little bit of removal or not kind of, positioning yourself back to when you were in that position. I've heard that referred to as the curse of knowledge. And I don't remember where I heard that term, but as soon as I heard it, it clicked. Like, you are, blessed in a sense to have this knowledge that you've won through skill, persistence,
training, whatever you've done to acquire a skill, but you've gotten so good at it that part of it becomes automatic, just like driving a car. And so it gets really easy to go back to someone and be like, okay, well, cool. Unlock the door, sit inside, buckle your seatbelt, turn the car on and put it in gear. Without realizing that you've just skipped about 10 different steps that are vital to this process. And someone that has never seen a car before has no idea, okay, unlock, what does that mean? How do I turn on the car? What do I do to turn on the car? Put it in gear? What does R mean? What does D mean? I don't know what this means. And a lot of people at the beginning need that kind of reassurance without the judgment of like, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a step there. Okay, so put your that shiny metal thing that's called a key, put it in the door, unlock the door, pull the handle, open it. Cool, that's the first step. Sit down, pull that little strappy thing across your chest, put it in the buckle over here. All right, now put the shiny thing in this ignition, that's the little hole here, and turn it this way. And once you get past that little basic step, like the learning curve, they take off pretty fast, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's another important point is a lot of people don't want to build a business around that, what seems so basic. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't want to go there because they feel, oh yeah, I'll be laughed at by, other people who are out teaching all, the high strategies. And, if you're into car, like drifting or, catching a racing line or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if, very often, they're the people who the very, very basic stuff is what people are looking for. And yes, having worked with entrepreneurs, I definitely would, startup entrepreneurs, you definitely would see it. They're probably the people who don't necessarily have the biggest budgets.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you were teaching somebody how to, kind of go around a racetrack and they're big into cars and they spend a lot of money, they probably have the money to pay you. Whereas, somebody doesn't have a huge amount of money who's just learning to drive. But if you have the right, kind of what I talk about is your value ascension ladder, which brings people along their journey from that one where literally you have to explain to somebody what a car key is and how to put on a seatbelt, that if you bring them up along the steps, that you can develop a very, very, kind of stable business because
Mm-hmm.
you're giving them the next steps to move up along. So a lot of people kind of ignore that real basic stuff, but I think it's, it can be a good entry point and it can be a good way to, to build and to grow a business.
Oh, it's a fantastic entry point too, because I think a lot of people forget that the biggest part of most every market is beginners. People that just discovered this thing or just getting into this thing, and you could be their guru, despite the fact that you don't consider yourself to be like queen high, king high, muckety muck of like guru of gurus. You could be someone else's guru, because even if you're saying the same thing that has been said 100 different times, you're the only one that says it your way through your particular set of filters. Like you told the story of being on a staircase. I told a story of being on a mountain, and we were both saying the same thing in different ways. And both of those things I think are going to resonate with people. And that's the beauty of this. Like I can teach, I've had a couple of people that consider themselves to be business and confidence coaches on the podcast before too. And I think every time we bring up the point that like, look, this is my colleague, not my competitor. Somebody is going to resonate with Mícheál more than they resonate with me. Somebody might resonate with Mícheál and me and work with us both. Like, so the fact that we're here talking about business is a good thing, because like there's more than enough work to go around. And when people get interested in a topic, they don't just pick one person and go, that's it. I'm not paying attention to anybody else ever in my life. I only study this person. I ignore everybody else. Like most people that are interested in a topic are going to buy probably 10 different courses, go through a whole bunch of, and then fanatics, like super fans, take that education to a different level. Like if you've got somebody that's super into knitting, they're going to buy every knitting course out there. They're going to try every tactic and hack to try and get faster, to make better So, I mean, the point being, it doesn't really matter where you're at, again, as long as you can help someone get a result and you can communicate like your vision and your process to them in a way that really connects. And that's fantastic.
Yeah, and you mentioned process there. I think that is one of the key things.
Mm-hmm.
It's for any of this to work, I think one of the most important things is that you have a process, you have a mechanism, you have something that is explainable And like, you have a specific steps that people go through that for some reason you've figured out that this is the best way to do things. And I think that underlining another area where, people who come and try to start up business just, based on what we're talking about is that they have a vague sense, they know how they do it, but they haven't really stepped it out. People love step by step. They love the process. They love to know that there's some sort of plan there for them to implement and to get the results that you want them to get.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something a while back too that I wanted to circle back to, because I think it's more of an advanced business tactic. But if you're at the beginning stages, like, keep this in mind. We're talking about a process, right? And all a process is you figure out and articulate the steps that you take to do something and to achieve something. I didn't have a podcast process until I created a podcast, and then I had to figure out all the steps, and now there's a process. So like, it's kind of counterintuitive, but like, you get into the work and then you start to notice patterns, and then you create a process from the patterns. And that's how this, like, you can't really plan all of these things out perfectly in advance. Sometimes you just have to go and do them. The great thing about developing a process is if you start working with people, you put yourself out there before you feel ready necessarily, you start working with people, you'll start to see these patterns repeating with your clients. And they'll be asking you the same questions over and over again. And you'll find that the same advice applies to people in 2 different businesses or at 2 different stages. And that's where you can start to create these digital products that Mícheál is talking about, because you've got a step-by-step process to walk somebody through, get them a results, and then they've bought something from you, and you didn't have to teach it manually every single time. And that's how you start to systematize and grow your business, like Mícheál has.
And from a scaling perspective, if you don't have processes in your business, you're not going to scale. End of.
Yeah.
So, if you, and scaling doesn't necessarily mean, 25, 50, 100 employees.
Yeah.
It could mean, scaling revenue. And it could mean if you're the only person in the business, you still need processes, because every time you create a process, the sheer act of measurement of an entity will make it more refined. You, by looking at it, you're going to think, is there steps I can cut out? Are there steps that I can outsource? That's, and that's pretty much what a coach almost, kind of does. Is it the coach looks at what you're doing and helps you cut it out. But what you need to do is you need to document, exactly, okay, here are the steps, here's what I'm going to do, here's how I do it, here's how I can do it quicker, and keep refining those processes. And that's, the one thing of anybody who has successfully scaled a business, I would say that is one of the things that they have invested in that has brought in the most returns.
I love talking about this too, because I think there's, especially with creative entrepreneurs, which are people that I talk to a lot, and I help them with freelancing, which I love freelancing as an entry point into this, because it helps you take advantage of a skill set you naturally have. It's a low overhead. Like, you can just get a laptop and a strong Wi-Fi and start looking for people that you can help. You could start a business tomorrow if you wanted to. That doesn't mean that you're going to be a millionaire sitting on the beach tomorrow. There's a lot of hard work ahead of you, but you could get started easily. You don't have to spend a whole lot to get started. But then eventually you're going to want to, just like Mícheál said, if you start noticing patterns, if you're developing systems and processes for the things that you do, write it down, record a video of yourself doing it. And then that way, when you get to a certain income level and you start in a certain busyness level, and you start to get overwhelmed, you could bring somebody on and hand them a document or a recording and be like, could you do this for me? Like, I've literally laid out all the steps, and you don't have that in your head, and you're not the bottleneck anymore. And that's how growth happens.
Yeah. And like, just because, you can use an example for freelancing, and just because you're a copywriter, like, say you're a copywriter and you're out freelancing, so you can go and you can work, you do a job, whatever, and the job gets good results, and then you go on to the next one, you get more good results or better or worse. If you actually have processed out, how you went about it and the copy and what worked, what didn't work. So you get results from the first campaign, you get results from the second gig. Now it's not just about, the scalable business. As well as that, there's a huge learning in building your own internal patterns, and in refining your own skills and honing your craft.
And I want to, at the risk of people interpreting this as I rubber stamp, I use the exact same process with everybody. And I think that's because you don't have to reinvent the wheel just to be a successful business person. You shouldn't make this harder than it already is. And if you find a pattern that works for you and like 80-90% of the time this thing absolutely works, or even more, keep using it. The easier it gets for you, technically, the more profitability you're making, because the more work you can take on, you could bring people, train them in your method, make even more money. Like, don't make it harder than it has to be. That's going to be my big rant. Someday I'm going to get up on my soapbox. But yeah, like rubber stamp this shit. Don't be afraid. Use the same process. Put the same framework. Create a template if you're a writer. Create a stencil if you're an artist. And you can just make it different for everybody. And they're still going to get a ton of value out of that.
Exactly. In fact, I would say that, okay, as a coach, as a copywriter, if you don't have those elements in place, it's actually a form of negligence, because you're not bringing your knowledge and your learning forward. And if you're always starting, and this isn't about some people who look, oh yeah, well, if I just have a template and I change, the words, or I change to whatever, well, is that an honest day's work? Just
absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. It has to be, because what you're doing is, if as you said, if you get a result, if you get one result, well, you need to document that, and you need to have business is all about consistency. If you can't deliver consistent service to kind of on a consistent basis, or consistent product, so let's not forget the product sellers. If you can't, you don't have a business. And your business is going to demise. So that's part of what, kind of processes and systems and this documentation of learning on kind of everything that you do builds and go for. And yeah, it's not sexy. It's, not, the bright, shiny marketing technique, or the kind of the whatever, the email sequence that's going to have people falling over to give you money. But this is what real business is. There's a lot of non-glamorous and a lot of non-stuff that goes into building a successful business, and it can't be all winning awards and out at gala nights.
I know. I laugh so hard. Well, because that I'm on this this digital nomad journey for at least a couple years, and I get a lot of people that are like, "Hey, share more of your adventures," and I'm like, the adventures that I'm having, I'm sharing. The rest of the time, I'm working because somebody has to pay for this trip. And like, I mean, if y'all keep bugging me for photos, I'm going to start doing like, hey, snap of myself doing the dishes, #digital nomad live. Somebody still got to wash the dishes. Like there's some unglamorous parts to this, even as I'm going out and having fun and seeing new places and eating all of the food. Like that's just life. There's some unglamorous pieces of it. That's business too. Well, and I liked what you said about, just this anxiety some people have about, is that an honest day's work if I kind of rubber stamp this? If you save yourself steps, absolutely. Like guys, big manufacturers design entire machines to be able to like create parts very quickly versus having someone carve it out by hands. Anything that you can systematize helps you go faster, pulls you out of the day-to-day grind of the business and lets you look at the big picture. It's good stuff.
And I think it's another common misconception, especially in, kind of freelance world or in the service world where, people are paid for time. Where people think that they should be paid by time. No, you have to break that link. You're not paid by your time, you're paid by result. So what result are you going to get? And I don't care, like, if I'm hiring you, Angie, to do something for me, like, I don't care if it took you 10 hours or 100 hours. All I care about is what are the end results for me and what do I get in my business? And, a lot of people struggle with this because the hourly rate or, the known prices are the yardstick with which a lot of people judge, kind of the inputs and outputs. But, I think it's a lot of it is a mindset for the individual business owner as well to get into that. No, that's not how I run my business. I run my business based on the value that's provided and not the input. Absolutely.
Like one of my favorite stories to tell on that score was this time I wrote 3 emails that did ultimately $8.4 million in sales. And they were not fancy emails. They were not long form emails that took me months to write. Like I would say all told, it was under 500 words for all 3 emails combined. The first one started with a very, very bad dad joke, but I loved it. It was like, it was a re-engagement series. So it was people that were subscribed to this list that hadn't opened emails in like 6 months. And we sent them this re-engagement campaign to try and get them to shop more in the stores. This is when I worked for a big retailer. And the first, 3 emails, 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 3 I hope you laugh as hard as I am, because it's like this setup that I'm building to. The first email starts with this joke of, "We miss you like a power tool misses a battery. Can we reconnect?" Just a stupid joke with a coupon offer to go shop in the store. And all of the rest of the emails continued that way. They're short, they're sweet, they're to the point. "Come back to the store, we miss you." And tracking them through their loyalty accounts when they redeemed this coupon, $8.4 million in sales.
And I hope you were being paid on percentage of revenue generated, maybe 5-7%, maybe.
Fuck no, I was an employee. So of course, like they took their money and then they yelled at me for having the audacity to bring them money because I didn't get it approved first. I just brought them money. But that just goes to show you how sometimes corporates can get mired down in ego, and it's better to be on your own. But like when I tell people that story, especially the freelancers that I coach, I work with a lot of writers, and they're like, "Well, but isn't it too expensive to charge like $500 an email, $1,000 an email?" I tell them that story, and then I'm like, "Okay, how much would you pay for an $8.4 million email sequence?" Because I'm sure not charging like $200 for each of those 3 emails just because they were short. They worked. Value. Like, oh my God.
No, it's look at it, and it's so, and I suppose the one thing, the one thing that people need to balance out, it's literally, what is that value? Because I do see the other side as well, and I see people who are probably not qualified, who cannot get the result, and they just say, you know what. And here's a crazy thing. Like I did an event with a very well-known trainer on public speaking. Mm-hmm. So flew over to, I can't remember, I think it was Florida or somewhere like that. And we were going, and there was, whole sections on delivery, everything else. And then there was the business of speaking. And this guy literally, he just came straight out and said it. And he said, you know the way there's like in the speaking industry, there's different levels. So you could be like a 2,000 keynote speaker, or a 5,000, or a 9,000, or a 20,000. And basically go up in increments of like 5. And this guy was saying, the best way to increase your speaking rates is just double it. Mm-hmm. And if you double it, and the next person that comes to you, instead of saying 10,000, you say 20,000. Not alone are you, a lot of people think, well, there's no way anybody's going to hire me at 20,000. Actually, if you get the right people, they're more likely to hire you at 20,000 than they are at 10,000, because they see, well, I will get 20,000 worth of value. Now, those sort of clients are unusual to come by. But I do think that, you do need to have value. Okay, what is the level of value I can deliver? Mm-hmm. And then, and you do want to have it fair and balanced, but you don't want it all falling back on you, where you're shouldering the burden of, doing the work and not getting paid what is justified for you to be paid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said something important that I want to unpack for people too, which was just to, especially, I mean, this applies to freelancing. This applies to any business. If you set a price out there and someone accepts it, to challenge yourself next time to double that, or at least raise the price and see what happens. Treat it like an experiment where you're just testing the price out to see where your floor is. And the cool thing is once you say, I'm a $20,000 speaker, and someone pays you $20,000 to do a speech, what's the likelihood that you're going to go back to charging people $5,000? 10 grand. Not very likely. Once you make that one sale at that new price, it's going to change your perspective. Something's going to click, and you're going to be like, okay, I need to find more people like this. It's amazing.
If you're not told on a regular basis that you're too expensive, you're too cheap.
Yeah.
And that's the fact of it. And it's an unfortunate trap that, I think especially freelancers get stuck into it. Like having worked with so many entrepreneurs, you definitely do start to see, and probably the creatives are the ones which are most likely to fall into that trap. Around products and around stuff like that, it doesn't, because there's very justifiable, I've got like X input out, why it costs me this much to get in, there's X number of costs. Mm-hmm. And with a product business, you basically are putting on percentages, but it's such a hard and delicate balance for people in creative industries, where there's no real benchmark, and sometimes there's not even, it was great that you could see the direct outputs of a campaign. Sometimes that doesn't always happen like that. So
yeah, that's true. Or you don't know exactly what, like there's a whole bunch of other things that went into that email campaign. It wasn't just my stupid dad joke about power tools and batteries. But like the list of people that we sent that to had to be right. The offer had to be right. It had to go out at the right time to reach them. They had to open the email. Like a whole lot of other things had to happen to make that successful. So success never happens in a vacuum. And I think that's kind of a great thing to point out in terms of, these creative campaigns. But interestingly enough, so like my mom is a baker, for instance, and when she was struggling to set her prices with her rum cakes, and she sells these little, of course they can't see me, but Mícheál can see, they're like 4-inch diameter little mini bundt cakes, rum cakes soaked in rum. And I
absolutely love that podcast. And guys, if you've not listened to this yet, please go back. Was it podcast number 3 or 4?
It's number 2, I think.
Oh, number 2. Go back to podcast number 2 and listen to that. It's just the sweetest, most wholesome podcast you can imagine.
I had to drag her onto the podcast, and then she did such a good job. Oh my God, it was amazing. She does like 12 different flavors of rum cakes, and she rotates them out seasonally. And when she was struggling with setting her price, I asked her, well, how much do you want to make? And that wasn't something that she knew an answer to. Like, she had never actually thought about how much do I want to make? And I said, okay, well, the cool thing about what you do is that since so few other people can do it the way that you do it, the people that love you are going to love you. And so you get to decide, okay, I think I want to charge $7 a rum cake, and then really work on making sure that that is a $7 rum cake that people are going to love, versus having to set your prices to what you think the market will bear, which is, I think, the trap that a lot of creatives get stuck in.
And this is a really interesting point, and just extending this out, like really, I spotted that there were, kind of really 3 traits that separate successful entrepreneurs from the ones that either just make it by and like I would have seen so many people coming through. I literally would have had stats year after year, who started a business, who didn't start a business. Mm-hmm. And it nearly came down to, like, I could tell by the questions they asked at the very start of the course whether they were likely to go and be, end up starting a business in that business. But the positioning of that, I think, is, quite important, because people think the first thing that I see is, you have to connect your business to something bigger than yourself. And by that is, most people think, oh, well, I need to go out and I need to, we think we're motivated by money, and we think we're motivated by so many things that we're not actually motivated by. Mm-hmm. The people that I've seen are the ones who link what they do, the service or the product that they provide, either to the transformation that they get their clients. So your mom wanted to be the best rum cake, imaginable. And I think if when we go back to and look at, like, from an evolutionary psychology perspective, we grew up as pack animals, where the community, how we evolved were that the intra-community help. And people helping each other to go along with so we're hardwired to do that, to work for the greater good rather than the individual gains basis. That's where the whole theory of reciprocity and social exchange all kind of come from. So I think, for people who really link what they do to some sort of benefit. Now, you have other people who are mission driven. So that's whereby they're building their business to, for charity. But it's definitely one of the huge things. And it's subtle. It's subtle distinction. But if you're working for your client, and what motivates you is the transformation that your client is going to get, it completely changes your focus, rather than, am I just filling my own bank account, and am I just going? So I think that's an absolute massive point.
Absolutely. And, value and transformation absolutely can be subjective. So, like, another thing that the listeners can't see is that behind me, there's a very big plaque made on a slice of wood that says "Fresh Out of Fox," and it's a beautiful little hand painted script, and it's got purple flowers and stuff like that. And I think I paid like $80 for that from an artisan at a local market. But and she had smaller little discs that were like 3 inches square, but this one is like a foot in diameter. It's pretty large. And I saw that and it spoke to me. I loved the colors. I love the message. It ties into my identity. I feel like it represents myself. And that's the value that I get out of that. So I bought that thing. Are there people out there that would never pay $80 for a sign that says "Fresh Out of Fox"? Absolutely. They think that I am stupid. I think that that's fantastic. And in the past 2 weeks that I've had that sitting up behind me on my video calls, it's like the thing that everybody wants to talk about. So I've gotten my $80 worth of value and then some, just from the smile. Like you're sitting here grinning as I'm describing this sign, which is great.
It is the most Angie sign I have ever seen. It's
I have to remember on certain client calls to be kind of like with my head blocking it, because like I don't know how cool they are with the word fox. But most people understand that this is who I am, and that's why they like working with me. The value they get out of me is my personality and the connection and the results that I deliver for them. So like value doesn't necessarily have to be money. To tie it back to something you said earlier, that there's more to life and business than just money. There's that identity, making someone feel seen and heard, helping someone through a problem. There's lots of different ways to deliver value to someone.
Yeah, and there's lots of different ways to measure your impact. So no matter what, it'll always come down. Revenue is one of the best metrics to judge the impact that you have, but never in your business should your measure of your success be tied solely to financial outputs.
Yes.
You need to look at, the impact that you are having. And, this is really one of the reasons where I fell in love with, online, information products, memberships, because seeing the impact that people can have, which ordinarily would have been reserved for these, large corporations and training companies. But for people now to be able to take a simple concept, go out, and the way I describe it is, a lot of people think, what do I need to do to make the world better? Well, that's not really a very good question, because you can't ultimately, make the overall world be a better place. There's some exceptional people who probably have gone that far, to like some Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, who've had real
Absolutely.
impact. That's not going to be everybody, but you can make your corner of the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in business, one of the ways that you want to look at it is, what is my corner of the world, and how can I make that the very coolest place possible for the people who cohabit it with me? And that's where, I really see. So I've had consultancy and training businesses one-on-one. I've had, I've been involved in product businesses and software businesses. It's really the online businesses give you the ability to create that community and to really, it was really in there where I saw, well, that it is. And it's funny in everything that I do, I think impact is huge. And I think we have a responsibility. So far too often I hear people sit back and kind of complain and moan about, oh, the government's not doing this, or the large corporations aren't doing this. No, how I look on it is, no, we're responsible. We are responsible to go out, and we need to first meet our needs. We need to first meet, our revenue potential and get it sort of work home. If you want to go back to Maslow hierarchies of needs, yeah, absolutely, go look at that. Whatever way you want to classify it. But once you do that, your responsibility to grow your business is to help others, whether it's create employment in your community, whether it's to give money directly to your community. I know one thing that I do is a really, really cool company based in Singapore, where they leverage so that for every service or product that somebody buys, they basically have a platform. You can go in and pick different projects. So these aren't big charities like UNICEF, and these are small community where, in Nigeria, and they're all fully vetted, and you pay a membership to the organization. But literally for everybody who works, I go and I'll say, okay, well, a family in Ethiopia will get like clean water for a year.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they can deliver that. And that's, kind of, I think that was what I was trying to get to earlier. When you connect the business and your need to, grow and have that bigger reach, if you connect that to actually doing good in the world, I think then your motivation changes completely and your outlook on business changes completely.
And the fear has a way of taking a back seat when it's about the bigger mission and the people that you can help versus what will they think of me? Like that's two different approaches and attitudes. And the first one is going to set you up for success. The second one is going to keep you playing small and scared.
Yeah. When you are, one way of putting it is when you are in service, When you're focused not on yourself, when you're not focused on sitting there, oh, well, if I put my head up, will I get laughed at? If I expose my insecurities or, the challenges that I've gone through, like, will people look down on me? Or if you flip that mindset to, no, there are people out there who I can help.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go out there and help those people. Suddenly you don't think about all those little things that are, kind of contributing to hold you back. So it's the way I look at it. When you are being of service, fear disappears.
Oh man, that's such a perfect note to end on. So, Mícheál, this has been a fantastic episode. I think we need to have a follow-up, man, because I could keep going for another 2 hours. I have to shut it down now. So tell us where we can find out more information about you if people want to work with you.
Yep. So it's mícheáloneil.com. We'll keep it simple. So that's MICHEALONEILL.com. And boy, it absolutely, Angie, before we kind of came on the podcast, obviously, I don't like showing up to things without a little bit of, so I jotted down a few notes of some points that I could possibly talk to. And Angie, we haven't hit the first one yet. So by all means, we've plenty to talk to. And it's been an absolute joy and a pleasure. As I said at the start, what you're doing matters. And just thank you for being you, and just, you're awesome. So go get them. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And hopefully I get to chat to you again real soon.
Oh, thank you so much for that, mate. We're going to talk again soon, man. So that is it. Another awesome episode of Permission to Kick Ass on the books. If you want to know more about the show, if you want to know more about me, Angie Coley, and the mission I'm on to help entrepreneurs punch fear in the face and do big, bold things, then head on over to permissiontokickass.com. That is all one word together, permissiontokickass.com. Make sure to sign up for my email list so that you know whenever there's a hot, fresh, and ready podcast episode out for you. And also on Mondays, I like to send out a little newsletter called Kick Monday's Ass. I'm sure you're totally surprised by that. So thank you for being here with me today. I'm Angie Coley. Make sure that you share this with a friend that needs to hear this message today. Like it, share it, comment wherever you're listening to this today, and let's go kick some ass.